All right.
In other words...
Yes, we got your question. Okay, so let's go to Christopher Hitchens if we can. Christopher?
I mean, the thing is that watch would therefore have had to have been made, not just designed, but made, manufactured, to certain specifications, and nothing like that occurs in nature. We did not originate as a result of a design. We're certainly not manufactured. It's very plainly inscribed in all of our DNA and in the record of molecular biology and in the fossil record that we very painstakingly evolved. Now, some people can say, well, that itself is so amazing that it must be part of a design. Well, that's an argument, of course, no one can beat. Because the more I point it out to you, the more you say, well, that just shows how clever the designer must be to have gone around these amazing pathways and byways.
Dinesh,
so Isaac Newton, incidentally, was a spiritualist, an alchemist. He believed in alchemy. He thought the Catholics shouldn't be allowed to teach at Cambridge University, which would have put him on the wrong side of Dinesh. He thought that the Pope was the Antichrist. He thought it was much more important to measure biblical temple foundations from arcane evidence than it was to analyze the laws of gravity. He was a crackpot, but he happened to be a genius. We are in the position now where we can stand on the shoulders of Einstein and Darwin, and we don't have to argue these nonsensical design points anymore.
Dinesh?
Well, I think the argument against design is probably most effectively made by Darwin 150 years ago. But I think what's interesting is that some developments in science since then have cut the other way. The idea that the universe has a beginning, the idea that there is an enormity of conditions that have to be met for the universe to contain any kind of intelligent life at all. I think more importantly, the great discovery of the last century has been that the universe is made up not so much just of matter, but of information, of intelligence, one might say. And the reason you need an Einstein, for example, to figure out the laws of relativity is that this intelligence is hidden. It's embedded, you might say, in nature. It takes great genius to excavate it out of nature. But then, of course, the question becomes, if we have all this intelligence embedded in nature, and it takes science to decode it or excavate it out, who put it in there? So, in other words, the idea of design is now, the argument is reconceived. It's not just a matter of how one life form came out of another. That's the argument Darwin tried to refute. But the deeper argument of why nature embodies this deep intelligence, so that what Christopher's own statement, the more you peel one layer of intelligence off the onion, you find a deeper intelligence embodied behind that.
Let's go to Brian in Bremerton, Washington. You're on the Medved Show with Dinesh and Christopher.
Hello. I would like to say that morals are not a set of ideals as much as they are a set of practices that work. You can't. All major religions have the same morals because them are practices that work. Because you can't live in a society and practice anything else and not end up with hurting your neighbor who's going to come over and like if you covet his wife or something, is going to come over and take care of your business too. You know, you just can't live in a society
Dinesh,
like that.
do you accept the premise that the morals of all religious systems are the same?
Well, I do think that not exactly, but I do. In other words, I think that there are certain distinctive cultural and moral ideals that have come out of Judaism and Christianity that you won't find in other cultures and other religious systems. On the other hand, I do accept Christopher's claim that there is a kind of universal morality built into human nature, but I don't think it can be reduced to the survival instinct. I mean, to refute that, all you have to do is look at every other living creature which does survive but has no discernible concept of morality. It is simply untrue that to live, for example, in communities, you can't live by wiping out your opponents, by establishing dominant male hierarchies of alpha males, the kind we see in the gorillas, and so on. So the fact that human beings have invented a sort of this distinctive idea that it's not only the way we live, but the way we ought to live, this whole vocabulary of how we should not act, a vocabulary that often militates against our self-interest, shows that something else is going on. If morality was simply a matter of rules of survival, you wouldn't really even need it.
Quick response, Christopher Hitchens.
Well, I don't reduce it to, I hope I was careful enough to say, I certainly intended to be, just to survival or selection. But the corollary would hold, however, if we didn't have such a view of the need to recognize each other as brothers and sisters, and as requiring our solidarity as well as our protection, then we wouldn't have made it this far, and the argument wouldn't be happening, just as with the previous questioner, who doesn't ask himself why it is that so many parts of the solar system are void and lifeless and empty, let alone the rest of the cosmos. He only wants to take credit for the good bits.
All right, and what about the credit for religion, if any, in helping us to live at peace in societies? We will get to that and more with Christopher Hitchens, author of God Is Not Great, and Dinesh D'Souza, author of What's So Great About Christianity, coming up.
002.
Yes, I'm afraid I do. I mean, I think it's unquenchable, and we're going to be facing its consequences when we find out what it's like when Pakistan and Iran have apocalyptic regimes and apocalyptic weaponry. We were going to continue to find people in the United States trying to stultify American children by having ignorance and stupidity and pseudoscience taught in our schools. We're going to continue to have people raising money for mad settlers on the West Bank who hope that by stealing other people's property they can bring on the Messiah. There's going to be tons of religion in our future. Don't you worry about that. The problem is it's become a direct threat now to human civilization and possibly even to human survival.
Dinesh D'Souza.
Well, I think that in some ways it seems characteristic of atheism to make a big deal about scientific progress while not conceding to religion even the possibility of progress. On the other hand, I think that there has been moral advancements and development even within religion and within understandings of religion. Look, I think the big questions of life, which is, why are we here? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What's the purpose of life? These are questions that you may say lie off the game table of modern science. So that science develops technique, it makes our life better in important ways, but it leaves these big questions of life untouched. And this is the province, to some degree, of philosophy, but more importantly of religion. And also, I think there's no other known mechanism for the transmission of morality to the subsequent generation. Religion is it for most of the world. So it would not only it would be undesirable for religion to wither away, because I think that as a species we'd be much poorer for it.
I'm very glad that Roxana is out of jail in Iran, and I look forward to the day when religion ceases to be what tells Iranians what to do, and that theocracy is not the means of transmission that ruins the lives of children, tells them they can be married to elderly men when they're female when they're 9, mandates flogging and stoning and biblical and primitive punishments. So is Dinesh really telling me he doesn't wish there was a mass outbreak of atheism in Iran?
I think that what Dinesh is saying is that there was a mass outbreak of reformation in Iran. At least one would hope so. Dinesh D'Souza, author of What's So Great About Christianity. Christopher Hitchens, the author of God Is Not Great. The conversation will continue, no doubt, in this greatest nation on God's green earth.